1 Maccabees chapter 1. And it happened, after that, Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, and he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. He gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries, and nations, and kings, who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them, while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died. And his servants, they ruled every one in his place. And after his death, they all put on crowns upon themselves, so that their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. They came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome. He reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward therein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the custom of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to mischief. Now when the king was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots, and elephants, and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him, and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt, and he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the candlesticks of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all of which he pulled off. He took also the silver, and the gold, and the precious vessels. Also, he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoken very proudly. Therefore was a great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned. The virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. And when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. When he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and the wall thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive and possessed the cattle. Then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. They put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals. And when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there. So it became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into a reproach, her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messenger unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings, and sacrifice, and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves, and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law, and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he should die. In the selfsame manner wrote he to all his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Now, the 15th day of the month Crackling, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. Whosoever was found with any book of the testament, or of any committed to the law, as the king's commandment was, that they should put him to death. Thus did they by their authority unto Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which is upon the altar of God, at which time according to the commandment they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised, and that hanged the infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore the rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died, and there was great wrath upon Israel. First Maccabees chapter 2. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, priest of the sons of Joarib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, Joanan called Cades, Simon called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Alvaron, and Jonathan, whose surname was Apphus. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people, and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Her temples become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath I had a part in her kingdom, and gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. A free woman, she has become a bond slave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste. And the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes, and put on sackcloth, and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler, and honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first, and fulfill the king's commandments, like as all the heathen have done. Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, son of Salom. And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law, and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that ever they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness, and dwell there, both they and their children, and their wives, and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. Now when it was told to the king's servants, and the host that was at Jerusalem, in the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number. And having overtaken them, they camped against them, and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto them, Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth, and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But they said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandments, to profane the Sabbath day. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us, that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in this battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them, with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, We all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives. And laws against the heathen, they will not quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him. Neither will we die all, as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. Then came unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. Also, they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces, and smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars. And what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, they circumcised valiantly. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. They recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles, and out of the hand of the king, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, in the time of destruction, in the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the Lord, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation? It was imputed unto him for righteousness. Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandments and was made Lord of Egypt. Phinehas, our father, being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Jesus, for fulfilling the word, as was made a judge in Israel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael, by believing, was saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Wherefore, ye my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law, for by it ye shall obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him always. He shall be a father unto you. As for Judas Maccabeus, he hath been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the brethren, and take heed to the commandments of the law. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers. He died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchres of his father at Modin, and all Israel made great lamentation for him. First Maccabees chapter 3. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he gat his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost parts of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered Gentiles together, and a great host out of Samaria, to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him, and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Judas took spoils in Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all his life long. Now when Seron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and a company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go and fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. When we came near to going up to Beth-horon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, How shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Unto whom Judas answered, It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few. And with God, and with the God of heaven, it is all one, to deliver a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before your face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. So Seron and his host was overthrown before him. And they pursued them, from going down to Beth-horon unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them. And the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Thus began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about, insomuch as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of the realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure, and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land, in the taking away of the laws which had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before. For he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take tribute of the countries and gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman, and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him the charges of all things that he would have done, as also concerning them that dwelt in Judah and Jerusalem, to wit, that he should send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Israel, and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away the memorial from that place, that he should place strangers in all their quarters, and divide their land by lot. So the king took half of the forces that remained, and departed from Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year. And having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dormenes, Nicanor, and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends. And with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judea and to destroy it as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power and came and pitched by the Emis in the plain country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria, in the land of the Philistines, joined themselves unto them. Now when Judas and his brethren saw that the miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them. Then said one to another, let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let's fight for our people in the sanctuary. Then was the congregation gathered together, that they might be ready for a battle, that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary was also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harps ceased. Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mashpah, over against Jerusalem. For Mashpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes, and laid open the books of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. They brought also the priest's garments, and the first fruits, and the tithes, and the Nazarites they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, saying, What shall we do with these? Whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us, thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O God, be our help? Then sounded they the trumpets, and cried with a loud voice. And after Judas ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens. But as for such as were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return, every man to his own house according to the law. So the camp removed and pitched on the south side of Emmaus. And Judas said, Arm yourselves, and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people in our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of God is in heaven, so let him do. First Maccabees chapter 4. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen, and 1,000 of the best horsemen were moved out of the camp by night, to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Jews, and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard thereof, he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army, which was at Emmaus, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Gorgias by night into the camp of Judas. When he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains, for he said, These fellows flee from us. But as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about with horsemen, and these were expert in war. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore, let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivereth and saveth Israel. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle. But they that were with Judas sounded their trumpets. So they joined battle. The heathen, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit, all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword. For they pursued them unto Gezerah, and unto the plains of Idumea, and Azotus, and Jamnia, so that there were slain of them upon 3,000 men. This done, Judas returned with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, Be not greedy of the spoil, inasmuch as there is a battle before us. And Gorgias and his host are here by us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies, and overcome them. And after this, ye may boldly take the spoils. As Judas was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain, who, when they perceived that the Jews had put their host to flight, and were burning their tents, for the smoke was seen, declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid, and seeing also the host of Judas in the plain ready to fight, they fled everyone into the land of strangers. Then Judas returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold and silver and blue silk and purple of the sea and great riches. After this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised the Lord in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Osias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would were done unto Israel, nor such thing as the king commanded him, will come to pass. The next year, therefore, Mount Osias gathered together 70,000 choice men of foot, and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came into Idumea, and pitched their tents at Basura, and Judas met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gave us the host of strangers into the hand of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor-bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of thy people. Let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away. Let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love, that all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Osias about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. And when Osias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judah's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antiochia, and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he proposed to come again into Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together, and went up to Mount Zion. When they saw that the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes, and made great lamentation, and cast ash upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress, till he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary, and guarded the foul stones and unclean place. When they had consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which is profane, they thought it best to pull down the altar, lest it should be a reproach unto them, because the heathen had defiled it. Therefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountains of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show them what should be done with them. Then they took the whole stones according to the law, built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts. They made also a new holy vessel, and into the temple they brought the candlesticks, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and of the table, And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon candlesticks they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the work which they had begun to make. On the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law, upon the new altar of the burnt offerings, which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even in that it was dedicated with song, and citherns, and harps, and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, who has given them good successes. So they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed, and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there a very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month Caslu, with mirth and gladness. At that time also they built up the Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified with Surah to preserve it, and the people might have a defense against Idumea. This is the story of Hanukkah.